This is TWiT.
Judge Mehta's decision, which finally came down a year after he ruled that Google was in a monopoly. The penalty phase finally completed a little late. He said he'll finish by August. I think he came out September 2nd with his decision. And I'm really fascinated by what you all think about it. I could tell you the stock market loved it. Google went up. This is from CNBC, 8%. I think it ended up being up 9% by the end of the day. Apple also went up because Judge Mehta said Google can continue to pay Apple and Mozilla and Samsung the billions of dollars they pay them to be the default search engine. Google does not have to sell Chrome. Google does not have to divest Android. In fact, Google pretty much doesn't have to do anything. The only thing he said is, well, those exclusive deals you make with handset makers, handset makers can use the open source version of Android for free, but if they want the Play Store, and of course they all do, Google had required them to also use Chrome as the default browser to ship with Chrome and to have Google be their default search engine. And those exclusivity requirements apparently are not to be continued. Of course, when I'm just imagining this, but I can imagine the boardroom with the Google lawyers all sitting around hearing this judgment and giggling wildly, and then composing themselves and saying, "Should we appeal?" As far as I know, they have not yet decided to appeal. Is that correct?
That's to my knowledge correct. Their statement they put out after this was pretty anodyne, and I think it's because you're right, Leo. They pretty much got.
It's a victory.
The best possible result. Now, they didn't win every single thing. There were a couple of wrist slaps in there, but to me, it was pretty much a nothing burger, a disappointment for folks who were concerned about Google's search monopoly, especially companies like DuckDuckGo were pretty annoyed. But I'm really curious, Harry, what you think about the data sharing elements of this, because that's slightly more technical than I tend to get. And so I'm not sure if the requirements for Google to share a little bit of search data are impactful, or if that's more of a thing that looks good but doesn't actually carry a lot of substance.
I thought it was pretty intriguing, but I don't pretend to fully understand its impact. I'm not sure if the judge fully understood it. So I'm sitting around being curious about it, and once again being, I guess not disappointed isn't the right word, but I feel like I've spent my entire career waiting for some big antitrust decision that actually does have seismic impact on the industry, and it seems like they all fizzle out eventually. Like even the Department of Justice versus Microsoft 25 years ago. At first, they were talking about splitting up Microsoft, and that ended up being more of a wrist slap like this as well.
And Harry, you're a historian, and this is what I love. One of the reasons I love having you on. As I remember, but correct me if I'm wrong, the judge on the Microsoft case was forced to recuse himself. And at that point, Microsoft got together with the DOJ and they worked out a consent decree, avoiding most of the serious penalties.
They worked out a deal, which I guess did have some impact on Microsoft's interactions with the companies it was selling Windows to. And ultimately the world changed a lot shortly thereafter, but it wasn't so much because of this agreement. It was because the web and then smartphones came along, and controlling Windows and controlling the PC platform turned out not to be a great way to control the world. And in fact, if Microsoft had moved past Windows even a little bit more quickly, it might have been in better shape. And you might even argue that the stuff they agreed to do helped nudge them in the right direction. Judge
Mehta did say that there will be a 5-person committee overseeing Google for the next 6 years, which is kind of like the ombudsman that Microsoft was forced to accept in its consent decree. But it's unclear, A, what power that committee will have and what they'll be watching for. We should make clear when we say sharing data, it's not sharing our data, it's sharing search data, right? The spidered stuff. And it is with, according to Judge Mehta, quote, qualified companies, qualified competitors. I think I heard from a number of competitors who are saying, well, that's going to help us a little bit. People like DuckDuckGo, Ecosia, and others.
Yeah, and in all the instances where Google likes to talk about how open it is, the search stuff, it's kept very close to the vest forever. So sharing any data I don't think it's something it would choose to do on its own.
No, it's their secret recipe. It's their Coca-Cola. It's in the vault.
The 7 herbs and spices.
Yes, it's their 7 herbs and spices.
Should we explain to people why that matters, Leo? Just so people understand why people care.
Well, if you like Kentucky Fried Chicken, it really comes down to it's just flour, but it's the 7 secret herbs and spices that make the difference.
They actually have special plants at the KFC factory that no one else has. That's why they're secret herbs. No, but in the case of search data, why this matters is if you have a lot of usage, which you purchase via exclusive deals, then you get a lot more information about what people are searching for, allowing you to make a better search.
That's really a good point. It's not just the page rank anymore. It's also the feedback loop that users create.
And the argument was you can't break in because if they're going to buy all the search traffic from Apple, then DuckDuckGo can never get the same sort of information advantage, and therefore their flywheel fails, whereas Google's gets more and more powerful and strong. So the idea is, at least in theory, by sharing some of this data, then other search engines will have a chance to compete more effectively with Google. So I think it's going to be a small point. But the thing is, do you guys use Google that much anymore? Like I feel like I'm slowly transitioning.
I think that's if you're going to give Judge Mehta a pass, and I'm some people are not willing to give him a pass. He even spanked the Department of Justice, saying they overreached and asking me to order them to divest Chrome, which is true. It's very hard to imagine. We've talked about this, how you would divest Chrome, what that would even mean. So he was pretty critical of the Department of Justice. They basically got nothing that they asked for. But what Judge Mehta did say is, hey, I did rule a monopoly in August of 2024, but he said the emergence of AI has changed the course of this case. Yeah. And I think he kind of, in his mind, realized that just like with the Microsoft case, times had moved on. And maybe he didn't need to spank Google because, in fact, Google was going to be in a fight for its life. Remember Eddie Q from Apple coming up on the stand and testifying, if Apple lost its $20 billion, that'd be a big problem, but that Apple had considered creating its own search and nothing was as good as Google. They wouldn't be able to compete with Google. Google's dominance is pretty clear, but Q also said that is not going to hold forever, that generative AI is changing the landscape. In fact, you see Google adding AI. They just added a new thing beyond the AI assistant.
Yes. The Google AI chat thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to log in for some reason with my Workspace account to see it, but it's google.com/AI, I think. And let's see.
Yeah.
I played with it and I was very impressed with it. It's different. The AI assistant is awful. In fact, I've heard some people say, you don't, oh no, I guess it is now on my regular account. They said, you don't really want to, Google's harming the world with this AI assistant because most people think that's what AI is like. And it's so terrible, so bad that they're assuming AI is worthless. On the other hand, this AI mode, which is basically Google's top models in a deep search mode, is actually very good. I thought very good, competitive with things like Perplexity and others. So
they can't send people to it though en masse because that would undercut their profit source. So right now they're stuck giving you a really crappy patina of AI on top of your standard search, and then over there, if you open door number 2, you have an entirely different and better product. But they just don't want to flip everyone over, and this is the innovator's dilemma. I think kind of spelled out in real time for Google, forced to defend a legacy revenue stream in the face of a new technology. But also,
so maybe the judge was right. I mean, maybe the judge. He's certainly getting a lot of heat from some quarters saying this was a slap on the wrist. You didn't do anything. What do you guys think? Was this? Is it? Let me ask you first, Harry. Appropriate decision?
Well, yeah, I don't see how forcing them to sell Chrome would solve much, and also who would be all that interested in paying enormous amounts to Chrome. Chrome is mainly a value if it's operated by a search company that has a large advertising business. And splitting it up certainly would have been harmful to Google. But whether it would have clearly made the world a better place for consumers, I think is very unclear. And I wrote about that when that first came up as a possibility. I do think that over time, the market changing so rapidly tends to do a decent job of policing things because even the largest, most powerful companies, if they do rest on their laurels, they get into trouble. And we've seen that over and over again. And there's at least some possibility that not only Google, but kind of all of the incumbents may run into trouble with AI now, because in almost every aspect of computing, AI could change things pretty quickly.
Okay.
I do have to point out, though, that Google, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Facebook all have other revenue streams, so they can spend vast amounts of money training AI models in a way that companies like OpenAI can't. I mean, they are spending it, but they have to do that on the pleasure of venture capitalists.
The models matter, but so do the products built on top of them. And some weird ways, it's harder to build a good product than to spend billions on
look at
training models.
Right, which is using others' models, but has really become a premier example of what you can do with orchestration. There's also the emerging issue, and we talk a lot about it on our AI show, Intelligent Machines, that maybe the large LLMs are not the only way forward, that these, the Chinese have smaller models. There's interesting models out there, interesting ways of doing it besides transformers that are also proving to be very powerful. So maybe these giant incumbents don't have a huge advantage. What do you think, Alex? Was the judge lenient?
So I think the judge was probably correct in the state of the market today. But what I hate is the fact that everyone says, and I'm sympathetic to this argument a little bit, because I do talk to a lot of people who are pretty deep in the tank on the financial side of tech, that technology fixes things. If you have a product that takes over the market, eventually it'll get beaten by something else. So therefore, why do we need antitrust protection?
Well, because we need antitrust for monopolies. That's the point, is that monopolies get so big, so dominant, that that the market no longer has any impact on them. They own the market, in effect.
Right. And Google had that for a long time in search. And then in the end, they were slowly taken over by something else, 15 years down the road. And some people want to say, great, everything worked out really well. But they had monopoly for a long time and they illegally held it. And it turns out the punishment is, if you can keep the case far enough away long enough, eventually you'll get saved by someone trying to take your lunch money. But the market was still impacted for all those years by an effective monopoly player. And that, to me, should come with stiffer punishments. So It's fine to say that today we don't need to take a stick to Google's overall corporate structure because they're being challenged by OpenAI and Anthropic and Perplexity, and over in China, Moonshot AI, Z.AI, DeepSeek, et cetera, et cetera.
It's amazing, yeah.
But what about 20 minutes ago? And that's what pisses me off about this. I feel like people are saying that because ChatGPT is challenging them now, nothing else matters. And to me, that's freaking bullcrap, I think, is the appropriate TWiT way of saying that.
It's also, in a lot of ways, I've been more bothered by Google's position in advertising than its position in web browsers or search or mobile operating systems. It does have a big competitor in Meta, but Google has been extraordinarily powerful when it comes to determining how advertising gets bought and placed and how much it costs. And, forcing them to sell Chrome might have had an indirect impact on that, because they have that power in part because they're able to direct eyeballs to that advertising. But I don't know how and when that changes, particularly given that the ChatGPTs and Perplexities are a very, very far way away from monetizing through advertising in the way that Google has monetized through advertising for like 25 years now.
So to be specific, because there's some question in our Discord, our club members, about what's going on with the data sharing. The DOJ asked for one thing. The judge decided something a little bit different. He rejected the DOJ's proposed data sharing remedies. Google will be required to share something called Doc ID, unique identifiers for each document in the search index, which can be used to retrieve the documents from the index without performing an actual search. The Doc ID to URL map, and that user-side data should include, but not be limited to, the time when the URL was seen, last crawled, the spam score. Basically, these are valuable little signals about the search index. It is not one time. There will be periodic releases of this information, I believe. Eddie Q and DuckDuckGo's Gabriel Weinberg and ChatGPT's Nick Turley all testified. Citing them, the court said receipt of this narrow data set will still enable rivals to overcome the scale gap by allowing them to build a competitive search index more quickly, one that is robust in volume, freshness, and utility. So basically the judge said, well, if you still want to do a search engine in this era of AI search, we're going to make Google give you some stuff. But I think the judge kind of felt like it's not going to matter that much because AI is happening. Of course, it is OpenAI. It was one of the companies that was celebrating this information. To answer the question about how often, does Google have to share the data periodically? In short, no. The DOJ wanted Google to share its data periodically. The court rejected that, saying that the qualified competitors will receive only a one-time snapshot of the relevant data. So that's interesting. It's just enough to kickstart their own efforts.
That doesn't sound all that valuable.
No.
What a disappointment. I feel like this, I keep trying to find some way to not get mad about this because I'm trying to be less mad about everything all the time.
It's good for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I feel like my cortisol levels were just too high. And this conversation is not helping at all. It is kind of incredible that a year ago we were looking at one particular set of remedies and now we're here. It's like being invited to a lunch and then arriving and being handed one crouton and a small cup of water and being told that you should be very, very happy.
No rubber chicken for you.
Something.
Yeah. Hey, I hope you've enjoyed this little snippet from a much longer show we call This Week in Tech. If you want to see the whole thing, there's a link down below. And you know what the best thing to do would be? Like and subscribe. And thank you so much for watching.